Evening. The time is now 6:31 p.m. on Wednesday, March 6, 20. Good evening. The time is now 6:31 p.m. on Wednesday, March 6, 2024. I call the Lexington Select Board to order. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format via the application Zoom, allowing public remote participation. All members of the board are present in person. Members of the public can view and participate in the meeting from their device by clicking on the link provided in the meeting agenda. As tonight's meeting is a working session, we will not be taking public comment except on a few items. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. Further, this evening's meeting is being broadcast live and archived by Lex Media for future on-demand viewing. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. Members of the board are in person tonight. I'm Joe Pato, the board chair. Sitting on my right is Vice Chair Susie Barry, and on her right is newly re-elected Jill Hay. Congratulations.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Sitting on my left is Doug Lucenti, and on his left is Mark Sandine. Joining us from staff is Jim Malloy, the town manager. Kelly Axtell, deputy town manager, is remote on Zoom. Also joining us remotely is Kim Katzenbach, the select board executive clerk. Tonight's meeting is a working session of the board, and as I previously said, we will not be taking public comment. I would like to remind all participants, however, that we are neighbors and are working together in the best interests of our community. I ask that all comments be made with civility and respect and without casting aspersions or reference to motives. Tonight, we'll begin with our consent agenda. And before we start, we are entering town meeting season. So normally for work sessions, we wouldn't have consent agendas or other items. But as we are crunched for time, we will insert a few normal items. So we will begin tonight with our consent agenda, and we have nine items tonight. The first item is to approve a Bedford Street and Hancock Street road closure request from the Lexington Minutemen and Lexington Historical Society for Patriots Day events. The second is a Battle Green permit for a Town Celebrations Committee for Patriots Day ceremonies. A Battle Green permits for the Lexington Minutemen, again for ceremonies around Patriots Day. Fourth is to approve the Communication Advisory Committee's request for authorization to negotiate cable television renewal license with Verizon New England Incorporated. The fifth is an application for a one-day liquor license for the Lexington Waltham Lodge of Elks, number 2204 at 959 Waltham Street for a breast cancer fundraiser. Six is to approve parade and Massachusetts Avenue road closure request for the Lexington Little League for their annual parade. The seventh is to approve and sign water and sewer finals and adjustments. The eighth is to approve lowering the Battle Green flag in honor of David Williams. I'll come to you in a few moments. And ninth is an application for a Battle Green permit for the Lions Club of Lexington on the Battle Green. Mr. Lucenti.
Mr. Pato, I would like to recuse on item 9 as I am one of the organizers of that event. And if I could say a couple words on item number 8. Okay. So as folks may have heard this past week, we lost a real legend in Lexington. David Williams passed away. David Williams absolutely loved the town of Lexington. It was like a family member to him. And David was not just involved in the town, but he was one of the people that I look at that ran the town. He was involved right up to the end of his life, literally like to the last day, involved in things having to do with the trustees of public trusts. He was on a number of boards and committees over the years, including Conservation Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, very involved in Lincoln Park Subcommittee, and for decades served on the trustees of public trusts. Also was a town meeting member for many years. He will be sorely missed by the entire community. Anyone who knew David really appreciated his sense of humor and his tenacity to get things done. David had an idea in his head to get something done. It was going to get done one way or another. And we were fortunate as a town to celebrate David's 50 years of service to Lexington last summer at Chiesa Farm, and it was a really nice celebration. And as his family told me this weekend when I spoke to them, it was so nice because it was almost like a memorial that he got to be at, and it meant a lot to them. We will, as a select board, voting if the consent agenda passes to lower the flag in his honor on Friday. And that's a picture of David up there. So anyway, if we could just maybe have a moment of silence, Mr. Pato, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lucente, for those words and for the community's gratitude for David's service. So I am going to move, unless anybody wants to take an item off the consent agenda, items 1 through 8.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Lucente is an aye also, right?
I get.
Okay. Any opposed, say nay. None. It is unanimous, 5-0. For item number 9.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm recused.
Mr. Lucente is recused. Any opposed, say nay. None. It is 4-0 with 1 recusal. Okay, thank you. Now we'll move to items for individual consideration. Tonight, colleagues, I'm going to ask your indulgence to adjust the agenda just slightly. We have Mr. Kunal Botla from the Transportation Advisory Committee online, and he has other commitments. So he asked if we could address just ATM Article 41, the Mass MBTA resolution at this time. If there are no objections, we will take this item out of order. Seeing no objections,
Mr. Pato, if you could have him raise his hand, that would be helpful. I don't see him.
I don't see him.
Mr. Butler, I don't. Ms. Kasbeck, could you make me a co-host, please? Right, I don't see him. Colleagues, why don't we hold this and go on to the first item? All right, first item is a presentation on the community charrette on Lexington Center, the revitalization report. We will be hearing from Dr. John Mullen and Dr. Xenia Cotval. And Mr. Lucente, do you want to just provide a few words of introduction as you finish that cookie? That was
My timing's not very good tonight, I can tell you that. So as the board is aware, and hopefully many members of the community, in response to some feedback we've been receiving over a number of years about how can we make the center more vibrant, we had decided to use a small portion of our ARPA funds to organize a community charrette workshop on how we can make Lexington Center more vibrant. And we got the help from Dr. Mullen and Dr. Coatball, who do this all around the country. And we got them and their team as experts to help us facilitate conversations in the community. And those were held back in November. And they were really well attended. I was really proud of all the comments and feedback that we got as a community on that. And they put together a report that they're going to review tonight. So I want to thank them and thank Mr. Malloy for all his efforts in getting all the right people at the table to help us facilitate this. So with that said, I'd love to turn it over to them to make the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Lucente. Dr. Mullen or Dr. Cotval, would you like to lead us off?
John, can you unmute? John will start off the presentation.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming through clearly.
Okay, thank you. Before I begin, I'm assuming we've got about 15 minutes. So I will go a little bit rapid here, but I'd like to start off by simply saying that thank you very much for requesting our services, and it was a real pleasure working for the town of Lexington. ranging all the way from the select board and Doug and the town manager to the planning staff. It was a real pleasure. Finally, in this part, it's absolutely striking how well done your planning documents have been, and that and they serve the town very, very well. Now to our purpose. We were hired with the intent of assisting the town and making downtown a more active and vibrant place. I think it was Doug's word at one point, he talks about we need to get into sizzle and buzz, and that sort of stayed with us as we went through this. We undertook the task through a review of current documents and plans, interviews with local residents and business owners and various committees. And then we held two workshops involving dozens and dozens of people. And I'll get into those workshops now. The first one held on November 17th, focused on strategies, challenges, and actions. And the citizens came back, and the top strategies that came out were to retain and attract new uses, that the people felt that Lexington was not keeping pace with the marketplace. Secondly, to support existing businesses, realizing that there's the increasing competition wherever these businesses are operating. The third is to revise the zoning bylaw to allow increased restaurants and nightlife. And indeed, one of the things that became constant about this is that Lexington is really a 9-to-5 community, and that indeed it's not taking advantage of those who get out of work and those who desire to have night activities. And that indeed is something that we had to take a hard look at. Also, they came up with recommending that we examine the factors that are inhibiting new businesses to come to Lexington and to prevent it from being a thriving center. Finally, addressing the vacant storefronts and preventing long-term vacancies. Indeed, various ideas about pop-up markets, those temporary markets that can come in and then hopefully ultimately convert into being a place for long-term use. On the second day of the Charrette, day 2, we focused on the building and the environment in Lexington Center and how it impacts downtown vibrancy. I was very amused in one sense that the people of Lexington came out in the rain, and that it was really quite something to see as they commented and made recommendations and probed what we thought were the critical elements that were preventing vibrancy. And that afterward we came back and we discussed those issues. And out of the day 1 discussions, various factors emerged. The first is the need to attract a variety of uses that cater to multiple publics. And you'll see in our report that we constantly talk about this notion of multiple publics. Lexington is not a place where there's just one market. It's people who are senior citizens, it's the working people, and indeed it's even the kids. It's the moms and dads in their baby carriages at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's the truckers leaving at 7 a.m. And indeed, what happens is that we need to address the multiple publics at the market that the town is missing. And it really comes out with something. This comes out of great work by Kevin Lynch, who's a very famous urban designer. And he says every town should look at a market as something that is an 18-hour day. And that indeed you do look at that trucker at 6 o'clock, and you look at those people who want to be at some kind of a bar or restaurant or a jazz place at 10 o'clock in the evening. And we have to address that. The second is to get information from businesses regarding the challenges. We don't know that as much. There are things, but for example, I know from our experience that if you have one shoes place and it's something that shoe company or business has been there for decades, it would be a real asset if we had others like it, or people who work in leather or things of that sort. And the adjacency and the ties in amongst those businesses is really important. And it's something we notice that onesies don't really make it in a downtown. It's important to have like businesses coming in because you attract more people, and allow them to have choice. Get information from the businesses regarding the challenges in terms of movement into downtown. We'll get more into that. Connecting with building owners on future plans. we recognize that you have a beautiful theater in your downtown, and that indeed that it is very important. This came out, and it came out of this presentation, that people approach the owner of that business to see what the prospects are, and perhaps more importantly, how the town can help that person to come and improve the building such that it is profitable. Engaging and connecting with building owners on the future plans. Okay, engaging more youth. This is an interesting one for me. I teach in an honors course at UMass on New England town planning. And last year, I've had 3 Lexington students. And in each one, each of my class, I've asked them, what do they see in terms of having youth involved in the downtown? And they say that there's virtually nothing for them to do. Now, students tend to exaggerate and use the word nothing an awful lot. But the fact of the matter is that they recognize the need to involve that group in the activities that are going in downtown. Building on the cultural and historic assets. This is something that in our minds, we came away and said, what do you do after you go on the Battle Green or you go to the museums? What do you do in terms of having more activities in there, and that you've got to move out from that base, and that becomes very important. Connections to the Minuteman Bikeway. This is one of the finest bikeways in the United States, and you're in the middle of it. And how can you take advantage of this? One participant said, look, I have a very expensive bike, and it's a treasure, and I will not stop unless I have a degree of security that my bike will be protected. Well, that could be translated into something where Lexington becomes a safe stop, so that person could rest and go and spend time in town. And so what we see is that connection is something that is really quite valuable. Creating better wayfinding, parking, and signage. Indeed, people do not know all of the assets that are in downtown or how to get there, and that this needs something to be addressed. Better marketing and promotion for special events. You're already doing great stuff there, but indeed, we don't even know what the assets that result from that. One of the questions that always comes up when we do these economic development analysis studies is who gains from having, I'll say, a Santa Claus parade, and which is probably on December 7th or something in that way. And when the crowds are all there and the business owners can't get the crowds in the door. And so what I'm getting at here is the need to have a linkage between the marketing and promotion of events. And then this is the big one, changing zoning regulations to allow for nighttime uses, raising height restrictions, signage, and improved parking, use of upper stories, and limiting street level use to retail or active use from youth and families. That's a bunch. And there it's very, very important that we look at this, but what happens is you are very restrictive, and that there are areas where you can increase height restrictions, and we can make this a far more active place. And finally, getting the MBTA to provide better mass transit going through the town center. Those are the points that the people of Lexington put in day 1. Can we go to day 2, please? Day 2, the town center is drive to walkable destination. People do drive to get there. And yet Lexington needs to physically achieve a sense of place in the center. You have a sense of place on the Battle Green, but you need to align the businesses, minimize urban gaps, and look at the width to height ratio. Now, what are these? And in fact, what happens in a downtown, if you have a 4-story building, then it falls to a 1-story building, and then goes up to a 5-story building. Indeed, we find that sort of downtown is not maximizing its capability, and it does not create a sense of comfort. We need to, in short, minimize the urban gaps. Furthermore, you see with in the picture here, where there's a width to height ratio that's way out of whack. And I'm not going to pretend to be a designer, but I can tell you what there is that there is a relationship between the buildings that surround other buildings, and it is important to bring them into connectivity. And perhaps most importantly, that came out of the day 2 discussion was Lexington needs to have a central gathering space within the town center. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Next discussion, please. Next one, please. So developing an action agenda. The first is to understand the current and emerging trends. The trends in marketing and trends of movement in downtowns are moving very, very rapidly. I'll give you one right now that people have never really thought of in New England to any degree, is what does it mean to have an EV, electric vehicle station, a stop station? You have it. Why can we not have one in downtown Lexington in the back of one of the buildings? What's important about that? It takes 20 minutes for somebody to power up, and then sitting in a car for 20 minutes is time that person can get out of the car and perhaps move about downtown. That's just one. We're also finding increased chains that are coming in that are appealing to the higher end markets, and that's something that Lexington can look to. We examine data on economic expenditures. It's incredible what the data is showing us in terms of the downtown movie theaters as being an asset and being able to revive themselves and to be able to generate activity. And we urge the town to go and take a hard look at where other places have had improved downtown movie theaters, and that because it's important to have them as an anchor into downtown. Analyzing data on events and how they influence expenditures. We talked about that. Understanding what types of businesses are inquiring about a location in downtown. One of the most rapid ones today across the United States is called something, the Paris Bakery. And they are bringing these high-end bakeries all across the United States, and they're booming. And I understand the first one has come to Massachusetts, but it's just the type of activity that can be very beneficial. We recommend to all of you that you go on the road and that visit towns that have successfully increased vibrancy. It's amazing to me is the industrial town of Hudson that has gone from having a nearly vacant downtown to having one of the most prosperous downtowns in all of Massachusetts in a span of a decade. I think the last I read is there's more than 10 bakeries in its downtown. And it really is something to see. When we do these sorts of things in towns, we love to go on the road trip and coming up and having you all go, the leadership all go to these towns and meet with the planners and the leaders there to see how they've done that. We came up with the idea of a design competition for alleyways, signature projects, and wayfinding. We thought of in our minds taking the artistic side of Lexington and asking them to come in and participate in this, and having their results shown all up and down downtown in terms of what can be done. And the final one here is to create developers kits. These are saying, all right, here are the assets that Lexington has. Here is what we're prepared to give to help you, and here is the assistance we'll give to help you, and putting them all together in this development kit and making sure that anyone who comes in who has an interest in this knows that Lexington means business in terms of downtown and is willing to help. Next one, please. So focusing on building in on assets. The Minuteman Bikeway in Depot Square and Emery Park. Emery Park is an absolute gem and it's underutilized. And we think that this is a very important anchor in terms of increasing activity there. Public parking and strong pedestrian connections. The public parking between the trail and the downtown buildings we have individual owners having space, but we don't funnel them and so that we bring people out onto the main street where there's choice. The building heights on Massachusetts Avenue need to be addressed. Some are tall and some are not. Wayfinding signs and road diets, limiting them is very, very important. Places for multiple publics from early morning to late in the evening. Above all, making public-private partnerships. That is assisting people with grants or assisting people in terms of making their businesses more prosperous from the public perspective becomes very important. Encouraging mixed uses and zoning reform. And we think that this is so important because virtually all of the activities in terms of structures are going to depend on this reform. Okay, next, please. So that in a nutshell is what we did. And that there are a couple of summary points. Number one, you're dealing from strength. Number two, the foundation is in place. Your planning documents are going in the right direction. Number three, it's clear that from the comments that people want to have a more active nightlife, and that's something that has to be addressed. It is clear that you do have an underutilized park, which can be very beneficial to the community. And so with that, I'll sum up and say that, again, thank you for having us, and that indeed we're open for your questions.
Thank you. So colleagues, we'll open it up to conversation. Mr. Lucente.
I'm happy to start. I want to echo my thanks again for this, because this was a really comprehensive list of sort of things we can look at. There's also a report. Unfortunately, I don't think the report was connected to the packet, but the full report has a lot of detail in it of what was said and a little bit more detail around each of the concepts. I will note, many of you may be looking at this list or hearing this and say, hey, haven't we already done some of this? And the answer to that is yes. And I'm really happy to say that a lot of the stuff on the list is actually in progress. Actually, we're going to hear the article presentation in a little bit about how do we get more MBTA bus service in Lexington. So a lot of these things are good ideas. What's really rewarding, though, is to hear that this is what the community wants, and we are headed in the right direction on a lot of these. What I'm hoping we can do as a board is take these concepts and prioritize them so that we have some action plan going forward, because we know we can't do all of it at once. We only have so much bandwidth from this table and the staff that's actually executing on a lot of these ideas. And I do want to thank again Mr. Malloy and the planning staff for all their time and effort they put into sort of preparing for this and providing reports and having meetings about the things that are already in place that we're working on. So I'm excited that we have sort of a task list ahead of us. This is on our top goals as a select board of how do we make this downtown more vibrant. And it's nice to have a target list of what to do rather than complain about it. We can actually try to make some changes. So very excited, and thank you again, Dr. Mullen.
You're welcome.
Thank
I
you,
think
Mr.
there's a
Lucente.
question on the floor from Mr. Creech.
This is a work session. We're not taking public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Creech
Okay.
is a member of the planning board, so I will go to him in a moment, but we're not taking public comment. Mr. Lucente, I do want to thank you for mentioning that there is a full report, because in looking at the slide, it was an interesting set of bullets that largely echoed what we heard at these sessions, but didn't provide the insight of what to do about them. So they're reportedly helpful, and I think it's from that material that we could start working on prioritizing the list. I think Ms. Barry and then Ms. Hay, and then Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Pano. So Mr. Lucente, thank you for pushing this forward, and to all the town staff, Mr. Malloy, for their work on this. You answered my question about what our next steps are, but just to follow up to the report that wasn't in the packet, will that be getting posted on our webpage or somewhere? Is that the intent? Is it ready for prime time? I'm thinking it would have been a public document.
We probably should have had it as an attachment to the packet, but I'll ask Mr. Malloy maybe if he knows where we could post it on the economic development page as a placeholder.
Yeah, we could actually post it on the economic development page and also on the select board page. I don't know if at some point in time the board wants to post your goals on the select board page. It would be a good link underneath the specific goal dealing with the center.
Yeah. I was on there today and we have last year's goals still. So yes, thank you.
Ms. Hay?
Thank you. So I'm very excited because I certainly know as long as I've been involved, this has been something we have wanted to do. So I'm delighted to see it. I look forward to seeing the full report. One thought that I had under the action agenda, we have an Economic Development Advisory Committee, and as liaison, I know I've had several conversations with them about their goal setting and their work product, and they would very much like to be partnering to further our goals, as opposed to, creating their own agenda, which they sometimes feel left to do. So I think this could be a very nice outline to take, and, Mr. Lucente, either you or I can bring that. I know we've had several conversations with them, and see maybe where their expertise and analysis can play in to sort of advance some of this for us. So I think that's another piece of the step forward.
And then also, I would echo that with the center committee. too, that's
Absolutely.
also extremely interested in this, and the tourism committee is, has been a big player in some of these ideas.
Right, and actually even the Arts Council for the design competition piece potentially.
Mr. Sandy.
So I'm very happy to participate in this Charrette's and the energy that was part of this discussion was incredible, and I felt it was very valuable. One of the things I reflect on, and it's mentioned slightly a little bit in here, is that when I travel to cities around the world, the ones that I'm most interested in visiting are very walkable cities. And I'd be interested in understanding how and what thoughts could be that the select board could actually, so there's a number of things in here that the select board can't influence, and there's a number of things in here that maybe the select board could. It would be very interesting to see if we could get some feedback from the folks who are presenting tonight, what things that the select board actually might be able to do in terms of prioritizing. So not just leave it up to us, but get some recommendations as what the highest priority things that might allow us to have a more walkable city. One of the things that I heard from a number of the folks who were in this charrette, and I'm not seeing it reflected in this presentation, is the notion, and I'm not sure whether this is actually possible, but many residents have asked us, would it be possible to use town-owned land as a way to revitalize the downtown area? And would it be possible for the town maybe to acquire some additional land and then use it in a positive way to revitalize the downtown area? So I'd be interested in talking about that. And then the other thing I would be interested in getting some recommendations about is parking. So it's mentioned many times in here, and we all have assumptions about parking, but I'd be really interested in what best practices are from other towns about, is a large area of parking really important for revitalizing the downtown, or should we be thinking differently about how to use that area?
Thank you, Mr. Sandine. So I'm going to ask Mr. Creech from the Planning Board for his comment and then continue back at the board. Mr. Creech?
Thank you, Mr. Pato. Just one comment. My observation in Lexington Center, and I've sat there and had coffee during the summer, is that a major problem is traffic and noise. And I'll point to Melrose Center and West Acton Center, where traffic is one lane in each direction. I know we just redid the center, but nevertheless, in both those locations, the pedestrian is king. In Lexington Center, because of the cut through traffic, because of 18-wheelers, because of mals towing, it's noisy. At least when I was there and the times I've been there, very noisy situation. So I would like to hear what might be done about that. I think as long as it's as pedestrian friendly as it is, I don't think we're going to have the walkable town center that we want to have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Creech. And I'll just remind everybody again, this is a working session, so we will not be taking public comment. So colleagues, I feel that there is work for us to do in digesting that fuller report, which we didn't get in the packet, to come back and attack this issue and create a work plan. I think my colleagues' reference to the various committees we have are absolutely right, and they should be involved. But it would be helpful for us to put on the table a ordered list of priorities of where we want people to go to help digest that report. And I would like to see that happen in the near future. I'm looking at Mr. Lucente, because you've done such a good job of leading this so far, and looking to see if you're interested in taking that leadership, because I think it does fall to someone to be the champion, right?
Yeah, no, I am happy to, and I mean, it's on my goal list as the person to champion. This is obviously key. So yes, I would be happy to do that. I think that's the right approach, is, you know, us to really sit on this a little, digest it. I'm actually emailing the full report now to the board, and I apologize for that. When I looked at the packet, I didn't realize that it wasn't attached. But I'll get that out to everybody so you can all look at it. I think on a future agenda, it would be wise that we have some time and maybe another work session.
Right, Mr. Malloy?
I'll just save you a minute. Mr. Lucente, I just emailed it to the full board.
Thank you. And as quick a read we are, we're not there tonight. Right. So we will definitely put this back on another work session item agenda, because I do think it is necessary for us to spend the time at this table, sort of having digested the more detailed material. Because I essentially remember walking away from the charrette with the high level view.
Yeah.
Any other comments or recommendations, Mrs. Barry?
I just want to make one observation as I'm digesting Mr. Creech's comment. So I walk in and out of the center pretty much almost 7 days a week based on where I work, and just getting around town. And I think since we did the Center Streetscape project, the center has become far more walkable. I understand there's a noise issue, and we did study the 1 lane each way, but I would say most hours of the day, there are people on the sidewalks walking, sitting, having coffee, dogs, kids, bicycles, and a few other things going on. And I think the center has become even more vibrant since we've done that project. So I had to say that because that was a project that was 10+ years in the making. And I really think it's the first step in revitalizing the center. And it's something we really should be proud of. And the staff should be proud of as well, especially Mr. Livesey.
Right, and Ms. Barry, I agree with you. I spent an awful lot of time in the center as well. And one of the things that is young with respect to the project is the foliage that it's been replanted, but it's going to take a few years before it really fleshes out. And that does make a difference in the echoes, the noise, the separation between the people spaces and the unfortunate thoroughfare. So I am hopeful, and to Dr. Mullen's comments, it appears that Lexington is on board with attracting bakeries. We have had a few open up recently, and 2 more about to open up, high-end bakeries, which for me is like, where do you find coffee? The place where you can get the best pastry. So I share your enthusiasm for that being part of revitalizing. So colleagues, if there are no further comments now, we will have this again soon, and we will digest that in more detail. Mr. Sandin, do you have one more?
Not so much as a comment as a request. When Dr. Mullen is talking about the types of businesses and how we need to have sort of multiple of the same kind of businesses near each other, one of the things that comes to my mind is restaurants. People like to have multiple choices of restaurants. I'd be really interested in what Dr. Mullins and his team has to say about how much focus we should be putting on restaurants as a part of this revitalization effort.
May I add that I think some of this is in our report, the types of businesses that would be attractive to Lexington based on data and the economic analyses that goes with it. I would urge you to read the report, and if there are any questions, please come back to us. If you would like us to attend another working session with you to explain some of these things in more detail or answer any questions, we would be more than happy to do that. So please keep us in the loop as you digest this information. And I do believe that some of this will be answered. Some of the questions raised about the walkable city, town-owned lands, parking. I think a lot of that is answered in the report, but if you need more data on anything, or if you need more specific information on any of those, we would be more than happy to come back and chat with you or provide more information as you plow through this.
Thank you, Dr. Caldwell. And with that, I'd like to close this portion. I think we will certainly be revisiting this in the near future. So colleagues, I see that Mr. Butler is in the audience now. And so I'm going to take out of order item number, the presentation on Article 41, which is the MBTA resolution, which follows very nicely on one of these recommendations, for the board to ask any questions. The board has had the video and slides as well as the motion, which has the full resolution for us to have studied prior to the meeting. Are there any questions we have for the newly elected town meeting member, Mr. Butler? So I'll just start by saying I completely agree with the comments Dr. Mullins made in the studies about the need for better mass transit and for us to advocate with the state. And I think that the resolution that you are suggesting for town meeting is a helpful step in that direction. And not only does it reflect on what Lexington has lost over the years, as well as what it needs, but it recognizes that Lexington is one community in the MBTA service area, and that it is the aggregate capabilities of that network that are what are essential for the Commonwealth to pursue. Not forgetting that we need some too, but that it is something that we as a community are advocating for directed investment and pursuit. So thank you. Other comments or questions from Ms. Butler? Mr. Ruth?
They can go first.
Ms. Barry?
So I just want to commend you for spearheading this and bringing this forward. I think it's a true testament to your interest in this. I know you're a transit user. And the other thing I would comment on is I think as we're seeing our community change and the people that are coming to our communities from other cities or localities where public transit actually functions are kind of like, what do you mean I can't take a bus somewhere? So I definitely think the more often the MBTA hears from their communities with a louder voice, I think the better for us. And hopefully something positive will come up out of this. So thank you so much for advocating at your young age and on behalf of TAC.
I was just going to add as the TAC liaison that there was a lot of robust conversation over, several months about this and about whether or not it should in fact come to town meeting or whether it should simply be a TAC request for us to send the letter. And the committee did feel strongly that the weight of town meeting in addition to our voices was important. And so I thank you for pushing that through. And I just wanted everybody to understand this has been really pretty thoroughly vetted over a long period of time within TAC.
And for all those in the audience, TAC is the Transportation Advisory Committee. Mr. Lucente.
So thank you. This is really great. I just want to add a little bit more color about what we're hearing outside of just the transit users is we're hearing from business owners struggling on a consistent basis. We're hearing this for years that they're struggling to get employees to Lexington because there's just not enough bus service. So it really limits these goals that we have as a community to make the center more vibrant is intimately connected to the transit issues that we're facing. So I think this is solving a lot of problems on a lot of fronts. Hopefully the state will listen, and thank you again for all your work.
Mr. Sandin?
And agree with all the things my colleagues have said. In addition, I do appreciate your linking the town meeting passage of the MBTA Communities Act last year with the MBTA and reminding that these are all connected. So thank you.
And Ms. Butler, I think we cut you off without having much opportunity for you to say, but and we appreciate that you created that video for us and all the materials, and they stand well alone. I'm hearing a consensus from the board of support. We will be taking our positions later on this article. I'm going to assume we're going to all be yeses, and no one is going to disabuse me of that fantasy. So thank you again, and good luck with your other commitments tonight. And I hope we didn't keep you. Very good.
Just saying, I'm already a yes.
Very good. All right, so we'll go back into our order of the agenda to our second item. So colleagues, this is to discuss the Lexington Human Rights Committee and complaints that the board has received. Before we start this, there are a couple things I want to say. One is that the select board is committed to making Lexington a welcoming, inclusive, and safe community for everyone, treating all people fairly and fully embracing the unique contributions of all Lexington residents. We reject all forms of intolerance and bigotry, anti-Semitism, racism, Islamophobia, homophobia, or other forms of hostility, intimidation, or harassment. Last night, many people were looking at the election, but many other people were attending an event at Lexington High School Science Auditorium, lecture hall, on combating religious bigotry in our schools and community. And I was very proud to see our youth well represented on the panel in articulating the challenges faced in many different communities when bigotry is not addressed as you run into it, and the need to be an upstander. I recommend to anyone watching this to go to the Not in Our Town website and viewing the Repairing the World Stories from the Tree of Life video. There are also several other presentations that organization has put together that are really helpful in understanding the challenges that many communities face of all different kinds of backgrounds. Since January, the board has received a number of messages regarding social media posts shared by a member of the Human Rights Committee. And in parallel, in January, the Human Rights Committee received a formal complaint about those actions. The chair of the Human Rights Committee engaged their process for creating an incident response team and evaluating the complaint. The select board did not pursue that while that active complaint was in process. At the February 26th meeting of the select board, however, these concerns were reiterated during the public comment section of the board's meeting. At that time, the item was not on the board's agenda, and the board is unable to respond to issues raised by unsolicited public comment at our meetings. The open meeting law requires that we address only those issues that are on our agenda, that are prepared and publicly available. Further, the board cannot act unless we are sitting here. So anything that we hear between meetings is interesting, but does not lead to direct action. At tonight's meeting, the board will hear the status of the incident response activity from the chairs of the Human Rights Committee. We'll also discuss how to proceed in response to what we hear about that report and assign some follow-up actions to board members. We'll also discuss the role of the Human Rights Committee and how it's perceived in the community, both from what is it that they're actually charged to do and what do people think they're doing. And finally, we'll discuss recommendations for professional facilitation that you will hear in this report. Ms. Lynn, chair of the LHRC, and Ms. Sue, the vice chair, will lead us through the status of the incident response. But before they begin, I should also note that the board has been informed that the member in question has resigned from the HRC. And the select board will not further consider the member's activity directly. Nonetheless, it is important for us to understand the concerns arising in the community and how they relate to the ability of the HRC to execute on its charge. So with that, if Ms. Lin-Michu, if you could come forward and sort of walk us through, if it's sitting, I think would be more comfortable. And as a reminder, you need to turn on the microphones to speak. Little green light has to be live, right?
Don't want to both be on. I get feedback. That's not a button. All right. Good evening. I guess we'll start. All right, so here we go. Can you all hear me? Oh, I can hear me. Okay. Thank you, Select Board, for having us tonight. I'm Christina Lynn, Chair of the Lexington Human Rights Committee, and I'm here tonight with Stephanie Sue, Vice Chair of the Lexington Human Rights Committee. It brings us no pleasure to be sharing this summary tonight. As we read this report, please do not lose sight of each individual's humanity, their kindness, and their warm heart. Additionally, we have been fortunate that all individuals we have had the opportunity to speak with have been thoughtful and accommodating. So I'm going to start with our report. The current chairs of the Lexington Human Rights Committee, LHRC, want to acknowledge several things ahead of the report. First, we wish to state unambiguously our commitment to the core values of the freedom from bigotry, hatred, intolerance, disrespect, and destructive conflict in our community. We also respect and recognize both our diversity and our commonalities within Lexington, and we believe in the practice of engagement through respectful civil public discourse and debate. Additionally, as reviewers of this complaint, we recognize our limitations in fully appreciating the depth of anguish experienced within our Jewish, Israeli, Arab, and Muslim identifying communities, as we are outsiders to these lived experiences. And as such, we recognize the increased responsibility we have for our own continued education and relationship building to resist the forces that dehumanize these and all other marginalized identities. As Mr. Pato mentioned, on January 16th, a formal complaint was submitted to the Lexington Human Rights Committee, alleging anti-Semitic posts by a member of the LHRC. In the complaint, the individual claimed their religious ethnic rights were violated and asked for the removal of this LHRC member. Also, when we met with the individual, they raised an additional concern about the ability of the LHRC to effectively serve all members of the community when there was a member who did not appear to model the committee's stated values. I've reiterated those values here: freedom from bigotry, hatred, intolerance, disrespect, and destructive conflict among its citizens, respect and recognizes both our diversity and our commonalities, and engages in respectful civil public discourse and debate. We were also provided screenshots of the social media posts by the reporter. So the Lexington Human Rights Committee Chair and Vice Chair have received additional emails from community members stating similar concerns regarding identical Facebook posts. These were not formally sent through our complaint portal, therefore it didn't trigger a separate review process. While earlier concerns were made starting in October, efforts were already underway to address those through researching approaches for calling in and dialogue for community healing. Additionally, the Select Board informed us that they were also receiving emails, as Mr. Pato had stated, and we understand that there continues to be growing concern and a sense of urgency by some members of the public looking for a resolution. The process we have been following is described below. So as the committee, we are charged with helping other organizations and town departments address conflict through consultation and mediation with parties involved and reporting civil rights violations to appropriate government agencies. To that end, the committee has created a process for reviewing complaints lodged formally through the complaint portal on our website. And The standard process for addressing these incidents is described in a document on our webpage called How We Handle Complaints. In brief, the chair of the Lexington Human Rights Committee determines if the complaint is a civil rights issue. And at that point, no other committee members are notified or informed. If there is a civil rights issue, the chair creates an incident response team, IRT, by assigning 2 LHRC members to review the complaint, gather the facts of the incident, and determine next steps. At no point are other committee members informed about the complaint unless the complainant and all parties involved wish to publicly share this information at the completion of the review process. This isn't a process where the committee deliberates or discusses the complaint together, not typically. So in this incident, some of the process was a little different because the complaint from January 16th directly involved a committee member. It was determined in consultation with the select board liaison and chair that the chair and the vice chair should form the incident response team. Prior to initiating a review process, we consulted the town council about holding an executive session of the committee that would enable the LHRC members to discuss this issue in private. And we were advised this was not possible. We also discussed the desired outcome of a resolution that brought a sense of repair and healing to the community, with emphasis on having a professionally facilitated dialogue, including all parties. So the following steps were taken to respond to this complaint. And as I continue reading, the complainant will be referred to as the reporter, and the LHRC committee member who is the focus of the complaint shall be referred to as the subject of the complaint. So an initial meeting was held by the IRT and the select board liaison with the subject of the complaint. And at our invitation, they were accompanied by supporting friends. We relayed that a formal complaint had been submitted about this committee member's social media content and that a review process had begun. Our goal was to gain a better understanding of their perspective and intentions. And all parties in the meeting agreed on a desire for community healing through dialogue and believed that it was important for the Lexington community to not be polarized on differing views of the Israel-Gaza war. It was agreed that the IRT and the subject of the complaint would reconvene a week later to discuss next steps. So at the second meeting that was held with the IRT, the select board liaison and the subject of the complaint and a supporting friend. The subject said they wished to stay on the committee and they agreed to prepare a statement for the LHRC meeting on Wednesday, February 14th, 2024. This also provided an opportunity for the remaining LHRC members to be formally made aware of the complaint and review of their colleague. So the IRT and the select board liaison also met with the reporter to listen to their concerns and the remedies that they were seeking. And the reporter expressed serious concern for the conduct of the subject of the complaint and also shared they had strong reservations about the legitimacy of the LHRC given the apparent lack of action and acknowledgement of the perceived misconduct of the subject. The reporter believed the posts were divisive and harmful in nature and therefore not consistent with our committee's stated goals and values. There's just some other additional actions that we had taken in this review process. We met with leaders of the Jewish and interfaith community, and we reached out to the Jewish Community Relations Council, the Bard Center for the Study of Hate, and the Council of American Islamic Relations in Massachusetts, in addition to exploring opportunities for dialogue. I'm going to pass the rest of the reading to my partner here, Stephanie.
Thank you. So what did we learn? One, that members of the Jewish and Israeli communities have shared their belief that these posts are harmful and offensive to their community. They questioned whether the subject of the complaint and the LHRC would be capable of defending community members' human rights in a fair and objective manner, given the bias they perceived in the content. Two, the subject of the complaint noted that their posts were not intended to be disparaging of the Jewish community or faith, but rather a commentary on state and government actions. Three, The subject of the complaint and others shared that the Muslim community feels pressure to be silent instead of expressing their perspective of support for innocent people in Gaza and Palestine. 4, some of the members of the Muslim community feel that a show of support for the Palestinian people is often misinterpreted as hatred towards Israeli or Jewish people when that is not the intention. 5, some in the Jewish community observed a sense that the Israel-Gaza war gave an excuse to be anti-Semitic, whether directly or in coded language. 6, some in the Muslim community shared that the conflict has also led to a rise in Islamophobia. 7, some in the Jewish community feel that their pain is frequently disregarded for political expediency, and often they are framed as oppressors in DEI frameworks instead of finding support and solidarity with their other marginalized groups. From this, we have the following findings. And I apologize for the repeat of 1, 2, and 3. 1, that the social media posts were made on a personal account. Post did not mention the LHRC or claim to represent the views of the LHRC. 2, the subject of the complaint did not dispute that these were their posts. 3, the IRT found the posts have made it difficult for individuals on the LHRC and in our community to feel comfortable working with the subject of the complaint, and by extension, the LHRC as a whole. 4, the IRT found that some of these posts did conflict with the values of the LHRC, and they communicated this concern on multiple occasions to the subject of the complaint. 5, the subject of the complaint continued to post content on their social media platforms that appear to suggest they are refusing to pause and consider a differing perspective, which is an important aspect of the work of the LHRC members. 6, removal of a member of the LHRC is outside the scope of the committee per the LHRC charge. The action can only be undertaken by a unanimous vote of the select board. And 7, freedom of speech and expression is protected by the First Amendment. This includes perceived hate speech. From this, we have the following recommendations, and there are quite a few. A, that the IRT recommends creating a process to address situations that arise if a town committee member's conduct or character is called into question. This process should protect the dignity and privacy of the people involved. B, the IRT suggests that a standardized norm or policy of social media postings and public comments by members of all town committees be considered. We also recommend a task force be created to explore this work. C, there is a need for community healing. The IRT recommends a professionally facilitated dialogue to address the Israel-Gaza war and how we can come together to support one another as a community with respect and dignity. D, and this may not it's not necessarily needed at this point, but we still believe it's important. The IRT recommends that a separate professionally facilitated dialogue between members of the public who were impacted by the postings and the subject of the complaint be held before taking into consideration whether or not they should remain on the LHRC. We recommend this for any occasion a committee member's ability to serve is called into question. E, the IRT recommends the town support additional and continuing programming to combat anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and all forms of hate. F, the IRT recommends that the LHRC build a diverse and multicultural collective to address hate across all identities in response to a common theme of hate incidents, leading to a sense of the targeted community bearing the pain and isolation. G, there is no formal training for LHRC members on conducting a complaint review. We recommend supporting the LHRC by providing access to training that builds their skills and knowledge of civil and human rights and conflict resolution. H, the IRT reaffirms its commitment to its core values: freedom from bigotry, hatred, intolerance, disrespect, and destructive conflict, respecting and recognizing both our diversity and our commonalities, and the importance of engaging in respectful civil public discourse and debate. The IRT also reaffirms that anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and doxing are never acceptable. And the IRT recommends that the LHRC as a whole reaffirm the same statement. In closing, we, and this is not in the report, but we wanted to emphasize it, is that we really re-emphasize the recommendation for dialogue. The rise of hate, even here in Lexington, is real, and our marginalized communities very often feel they are combating it in isolation. If we are committed to being an inclusive and welcoming community, we have to invest in furthering conversations that lead to de-siloing and allowing for a deeper understanding of one another. This is the only way we can truly become a community that stands together, not only when harm is happening, but in celebration of our unique identities. Thank you.
Thank you. So colleagues, this is a difficult issue. It is a difficult issue in the community and for all of us. We're not going to resolve it tonight. I only wish we could. But I do think that we need to initiate some work to address a number of these recommendations that have come to us. And not in a particular order. I think there is the concerns that have been raised by the Human Rights Committee about the degree of training that they receive or skills. And this is part of what I meant by what is the charge that what are the expectations that we've placed on them as an organization, and what are the perceptions that the community has, both with regard to the power they may have, as many people perceive as an adjudicatory body, which they are not, and the skills that they come equipped with. My personal belief is we should not be asking for a volunteer committee to undertake tasks that we are not providing them adequate support for. So either we find a way to provide support, or we make it clear what the limitations are for what that committee should be able to do. And I don't believe that that is a simple choice, nor is it one that we can come to very quickly. But I would like to see the board, in conjunction with staff and members of the LHRC, work on refining what those options are and what preferred directions we can take. The committee has also recommended continued dialogue. I think that is an essential activity for the community and for us to, given the heightened state of sensitivities that exist today and are increasing in the community, not just in Lexington, but worldwide, that we tackle trying to bring opportunities for our residents to understand each other and to diffuse potential tensions that are located here. To that end, Ms. Axtell has provided some research on where we will go. And what I'm going to ask is for a board member to champion that direction, to come back in the near term with what can we put together. There are a few more comments I'd like to make, but I've monopolized for the board speaking on this, and I want to give the board opportunities either to ask questions or make comments. You don't have to, but if you would like to, you are welcome. Ms. Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Pato. So I want to open by acknowledging all the people that have come forward. And I want to acknowledge the people that are sitting in the room tonight. I want to acknowledge the people that have been attending our meetings off and on. And I'm not trying to make sides on this at this time, but the community is hurting. And so I want to, this is going to sound a little odd, but I want to say thank you for coming forward. Thank you for sending us your emails. And I am really sorry that you are hurting. To a certain degree, this town is a community. We talk to each other. We work together towards purposes because we all really want to go in the same direction. And so it hurts me that people are hurting in our community and that it's not a simple fix. You know, when you're a mom, you want to be able to like clean the boo-boo, kiss it, put the cute little Band-Aid on it, and all's going to be well, have a cookie, you're good. And this isn't a simple fix. This is something that's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of commitment from our community, but it starts with, first of all, admitting there's an issue, which I think we're doing here tonight, in finding a path where we're working together to move forward, okay? And that's going to take time. I 1000% support a facilitated conversation. It's something that we've needed for a while, and this issue has exposed it even more. People need to feel that there is a safe place where they can come and they can express themselves. Without getting too far down into the weeds about what we heard tonight, I will say there was a failure of our systems here on multiple levels, in my opinion. I don't feel that a committee should be charged or recommended, and I understand this might have come from two of my fellow members, to investigate one of their own members, especially in an incident such as this, or any incident. I don't think that's appropriate. You wouldn't find that in the workplace. I think the process should have unfolded differently, but I'm sitting here being the armchair quarterback after the fact. You know, I understand from different conversations I've heard in the community, there's been a different level of engagement with the select board, and unfortunately, we are restricted by open meeting law to what we can and can't talk about. However, I will remind some of my colleagues and Mr. Pato as well, we can ask the town manager to work with us to relay information to us. There's information I learned in the last week that I was not aware of since this started. So again, to everybody who's concerned about this, who's hurting, I'm sorry, because as the board here, and I'm going to fall on the sword for us, guys, we failed you. We should have looked into this incident sooner. We should have addressed this sooner. So we can't go backwards. We can only go forwards, and we can only do that together as a community. And that's where I, again, say, I think we truly need to work together with a facilitator. This is not the first time we have been down the path on an issue such as this. In the past, when we had a significant issue, we did work through the town manager and the superintendent to get a facilitator, and they kept us informed of things. So that was a way that we could all know what was going on, and it wasn't as siloed, because communication really is at the heart of this. You know, communication, our words can hurt. Our postings can hurt. Email is tone deaf, as are text messages. Facial expressions sometimes are misinterpreted, but at the heart of it all, we all want what's best for our community. And so thank you for all of those who reached out to us, and I'm sorry, but we are going to find a way to correct to work towards correcting some of our failures here. We really need to be what I'm going to call naked, and really look into where the failures were, not place blame anywhere, but learn from them and move forward as a community. And along those lines, I feel we're in a different position now than we were when the Human Rights Commission was formed I believe it was in 2008. We now do have a chief equity officer who can help us in that work. We do have a human services director who could help us in that work. You know, our deputy town manager can help us in that work. Our police department is skilled in this. In fact, Lieutenant Dunbar is in the back of the room tonight. They can all help us in this work, but we have to be able to talk to each other. And I understand trust might be a little shaky right now, but we can work on it. And together as a community, we will work towards healing.
Thank you, Ms. Barry. Any other comments, or I have a few more? So what I would like us to do is to charge a study task force. Among the things that are problematic in the way we have currently constituted the Human Rights Committee, and I stress committee, not commission, because commission carries a broader mandate. We have town staff members who have the roles that Ms. Barry suggested, but they're members of the committee. And as soon as they become members of the committee, they become encumbered with the open meeting law with regard to addressing issues. And staff should not be in that position. They should be able to execute in the ways that the chairs just reported, to be able to engage in a proper privacy preserving process that doesn't require a discussion on television. So that is one of the things I would like for that study group to focus on, is in the reconstitution of what the expectations are. It's also, what are the members? Who are the members, rather, and that staff members should be liaisons to that committee, actively engaged in the committee, but not be hamstrung in the way that a public body, as opposed to a professional group, is performing. There's a mention in the recommendations of a code of conduct for all committee members, both in aspirations of what that organization is seeking to be, as well as guidance in what public statements should be like. This I endorse, but is a challenging area. We are clearly involved in the First Amendment here, and individuals will always have the freedom to express themselves in any way they choose. The task here, I believe, is to establish some norms and expectations for how public behavior reflects on the role associated in that particular body. And whatever we do here is something that we need to be very careful in how we articulate it, to be clear that we are never actually stepping on an individual's rights, but calling for adherence and expectations of a certain form of behavior that is consistent with the norms of the community. That's going to be a challenge, and one that I would like clear legal advice on as we draft it. But I do believe it will be helpful to have some form of articulation so that we as a community understand. I don't know whether or not there is actually a solution to that kind of guideline that will be stand up, but I would like us as a community to pursue that. I'll let Mr. Lucente speak.
You first.
So thank you both. I know this is incredibly difficult on every level. It's hard to watch it. It's been hard to sit on the sidelines, sort of echo a lot of what Ms. Very said. She said it very well. We're sometimes sitting on the outside looking in and not able to talk about it amongst ourselves. And, you know, it's frustrating. I can only imagine how frustrating it's been for the members of the Human Rights Committee and the members of the community that want action quicker or, you know, expected different outcomes at different periods. So I share in that frustration. You know, in looking at the recommendations, I think the most alarming one to me is the no formal training part. You know, we have an obligation, I believe, as a board and as a town. If we're going to have a committee, we need to give them the tools to do what we're asking them to do and not put people in a position where they're asked to do something they're not prepared to do or they don't have funding to do. And I think we've underserved the Human Rights Committee for a number of years, and you know, be almost better not to have one than to try to do it wrong, you know, because then it hurts everybody if we're just trying and we don't have the resources. I'm even hearing these things about facilitators and you're bringing experts in to help us through these conversations. And of course, nobody wants to talk about this part, but who's paying for that? And what bucket of money is it coming out in a year? I don't have an answer. I don't know that the board even has an answer of where would we pay for a facilitator out of. We could sure figure out some, but if the numbers get too high, then it's, you know, where does this money come from? So we also have an obligation to finance what we're asking to be done, just like we would finance. We would never say, we want a brand new high school built. We're going to try to do it, you know, for $5 per household, you know, and see what we get. You're not going to get a good result, you know, and I think just stepping back, that feels what we've done in this situation. I was liaison to the Human Rights Committee for a very short 1-year period, I believe. And at that time, I was brand new to the board, but there were some pretty big issues at that point too. And these issues came up about training and getting everybody sort of on the same page with what's the role and what's the mission. So I know that past chairs have done some great work and researching what do other human rights committees do in the Commonwealth. We're not the only ones that have a human rights committee. You know, what best practices? I know they did a lot of research on that, and you know, maybe it's time for us to take that pause and reflect on what should this committee do how can it best serve the people of Lexington? How can we prevent sort of the anxiety and divisiveness that may come from incidences, locally? And, I look forward to us being able to make some positive movement on this. As Ms. Barry said, there's not much we can do about what happened yesterday, but we can definitely work toward tomorrow and have a, better scenario. So I think, I want to apologize to, everybody that, we can do better in Lexington. So thank you for, again, all the work.
Yes, I.
Thank you. So I am also frustrated by how we handled this and how long this situation has taken to get to this point, but I am grateful we are here and that we are having this conversation. I am grateful for the work that you put into this report. And I guess I want to take a slightly different tack, and I want to say, like Mr. Lucente, I also was liaison to the HRC several years ago, and it was before we had an equity officer. It was before we frankly had a real DEI agenda either, and the HRC was the only thing that stood between what was happening in reality and what we were able to do at any level. Even then, though, when you look at what the description of the function of this committee is, in its own charge, it is public advocacy, it is sponsoring education programs, it's helping other organizations and town departments as they address conflict, it is reporting civil rights violations, and it's assisting in planning responses, advocating action, which are advocating, again, responses to actions antithetical to the core values expressed. None of that really is the investigative piece. So and the fact that we do now have an equity office, and finally this year, if the budget passes, a budget for the equity office, I really think that that is where the training should lie, because while I am truly grateful, we also have seen in the last 5 years, this is a committee that has turnover as well, and rightfully, because it is a very hard job. And so to Doug's point about the expense of training, is that the right place to put that training, or would we be better off both from the open meeting law and the consistency to put the training and put the effort into the empowering of our equity officer and allowing that person to really be the first line of defense, frankly, on this. And that would frankly be my recommendation on this. And then the only other thing I want to say is we absolutely need standards of conduct. And the only distinction I want to make, Mr. Pato, you said something about clarifying when someone acts out of the norms of our community. And to my mind, it is nothing to do with the norms of the community, but rather the expectations of the position in which they are serving. If you're sitting on the bicycle advisory committee, I'm going to feel very differently about your social media posts than if you're sitting on the HRC. If you're sitting on the HRC and you say everybody should get rid of their bikes and drive a car, it's your opinion. Everybody is in fact entitled to their own opinion, right, wrong, or indifferent. It's when your opinion is antithetical to the purpose for which you were appointed that I have a real problem.
Right, thank you for clarifying and say that actually was my intent, is the norms of the community with regard to the function of the body, but I hadn't written that down. So Mr. Sandin, you had to make some comments and then I have some more again.
So, yes, this has been an incredibly painful process for everybody involved, the entire community, and I acknowledge that. And one of the reasons I moved to Lexington, one of the reasons I've been so happy to live in Lexington is because we have a long history of being able to engage in contentious, in many cases, dialogue, but do it in a respectful way that lifts everybody up and continues to provide for healing over time. And that's my goal, is to continue that long history that we've had in Lexington of being a superb town for being able to look each other in the eye and work together as neighbors. And that's my hope for moving forward. I agree with many of the things that my colleagues have said. The recommendations of the chairs, that we are putting people in a position that they shouldn't be in without training. And I do think that this evolved over time, as one of my board members said, when we didn't have the staff to do this type of work. So that it was felt that there was there needed to be a place for people to report things that might not be directly where people might not feel comfortable directly reporting to other locations. And so, but it seems to have grown beyond what it was originally intended for. And I do not believe that a body like this without any training should be doing investigation of civil rights. This is a highly complex area that needs a tremendous amount of training. And I do agree with Ms. Hay that this is something that needs to have consistency over time. And so if we have a body where people are changing every 3 years or so, it may not be the best way to expend our resources in terms of training. I personally do agree that we have allowed something to grow beyond what the original charter was for this organization. And I do think that all the valuable things that Ms. Hay has read out of the charter are valuable things that should continue in the organization. But I don't think that this organization should be continuing to investigate civil rights incidents. And I apologize that we're in a situation that is where we ended up. But it was a process that was in existence at the time this complaint was made, and had to follow through that process.
Ms. Hay?
Yeah, and thank you. I just want to add, when I spoke about the equity office being sort of the home base for this, I did not go on, and I should have, to say that doesn't mean that that's the only place. And I'm sort of envisioning something more akin to what we do with the traffic safety group, where we have an appointed staff person, but they have a collaborative group of other staff and volunteer. It can be, a combination of people who comprise sort of an advisory group for the equity officer. So it may be, as Ms. Berry stated, whether it's, from the police department, whether it may be a member of the committee, wherever whether it's from LICA, Lexington Interfaith Clergy Association. Sorry, I'm trying not to use acronyms. Whatever the group may be, but that would be where I think the important point. Sorry. The important point is that we have a consistent and professional person who owns this, and then they can determine what the best resource is that helps them move that forward. And it may be different in different cases.
Thank you. So I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Sandine. First, LICA is the Lexington Interfaith Community Association. They changed their name. So the acronym in this case actually was better. And I just want to put on the table clearly what I'm asking the board to do is not to make a decision tonight. It is very helpful to hear us, because again, we can only talk to each other sitting at this table, which can be very awkward. Or no more than two of us can talk on any topic. You can't cross the quorum boundary on a topic. but I want to get a formal proposal. So I want a task to be created tonight, and I'm going to ask for volunteers who I will name to carry this forward. And I'll come back to that after we get a little further along. So Mr. Sandin?
So I also, so agreeing with that idea about this reporting and trading aspect of this, to address the larger issue of the pain that's in our community and the healing that's needed in our community, I very much agree with the recommendations that have been made this evening that we need to have a professionally facilitated conversation among community members to address these issues at a deeper level. And as Mr. Pato mentioned about the event last night, I also attended the event last night, which was an incredible event that showed community reaching out across many other community. A community that was hurting was supported by many other communities that were also hurting in that community, and a lot of healing can occur. That's my goal here. I do think we need to have a professionally facilitated dialogue, as they said last night in the meeting. This is not a conversation that can occur in one day. It needs to be many conversations on an ongoing basis in order to achieve the goals that we have here. And I hope that we as a board support that.
Thank you, Mr. Shandy. I did neglect it. It was well attended last night at the high school, and we had some representatives from the school committee and from the school department, because this was co-hosted by or put on by the school department with then support from the HRC, from LICA, and from LUA, Lexington United Against Anti-Semitism. So let me move to tasks. I think there are two major tasks for us right now. One is to take the short-term evaluation of how can we put together a facilitated or some process for allowing the community to hear itself. And I'm going to ask, I know Ms. Axtell has already done some research for us, and there are some staff members that she's identified who could work on it. And I'd like for the board to ask Mr. Sandin to tackle that short-term short-term request to bring us a proposal for how to proceed, what options are available for the board to recommend. The second task is to review the charge for the HRC and what processes have evolved from it. So for example, the incident response process is not something in the charge. And I think what I've been hearing around the table is, given today's training available for the Human Rights Committee, we are not providing you with the support that's necessary. And I would like for a member, Ms. Hay, to take the lead on redrafting or re-articulating what the charge is and what the limitations are for what we're asking out of a volunteer committee. And in parallel, outline what we would like to see out of a professional staff organized activity and how they relate. These are investigations, because anything that we're going to ask staff to do, Mr. Malloy, is something we're going to propose. We have to make sure we have budget for, or that there is an appropriate use and skill sets available. But I do think that we need to investigate and come up with a concrete recommendation that the board can then consider. And to say, I don't want you to do this alone. But I'd like, from the board's perspective, I would ask if you would take the lead, since board members can't work on this together. And then work with staff and with HRC chairs to come back with a proposal to the board. In both cases, if there is a second member of the board who would like to assist, you're welcome, but we can't assign that. And no more than a second member can participate as an assistant. I'm putting this out as a proposal. If the board is, first off, for Mr. Sandine and Ms. Hay, if you're willing to take that on, it's not a small ask. Because we too are volunteers. Let me start there. Mr. Sandine, are you willing to take on the first task? Ms. Hay, are you willing to take on the second?
I certainly can. I certainly can do a draft and do a little bit of digging, and I may call in some reinforcements here and there.
Good, and then we will work on, what staff assistance, et cetera, that you should be able to expect. And first drafts is really all I'm looking for, because then you can bring it back to the board and can discuss, and if somebody else needs to take on the leadership of the work, that's fine. But we don't have progress unless there is someone assigned. If there's a different member of the board who would prefer to do this, I didn't hear either Mr. Sandine or Ms. Hay being thrilled that I'm tasking them. They are thankfully not stepping back, but if there's someone else who wants to do this, that Mr. Lucente.
I'm not volunteering, but I'm just one, I think, important piece, and I mentioned this earlier, is some work has been done with these concepts from volunteers that may or may not still be on the Human Rights Committee, and we should probably enlist the help of that. No sense in reinventing the wheel or rethinking the thought. So I would just encourage that this, as much as it can be, collaborative for the first draft. So I know Ms. Hay will do that, but I just thought it was worth mentioning.
No, it's very helpful, and I agree. I think Ms. Hay would have done that anyway, but it's
Exactly what I meant.
What I'm going to do is make clear what this table is getting going, and that it comes back here. Ms. Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Pato. If you need help, let me know. The two things I just want to follow up on. I realize they have to go out and do some, I'm going to call it exploratory. We've already used the word investigative too much tonight. So some exploratory work. I'm going to put our feet to the fire here. So to say, when are they coming back? And we're going into town meeting season. We need to not just say they've gone to do their exploratory work. They'll be back sometime after town meeting, May, June, July, whatever. So I think it would be helpful for us and for the community if they knew when to expect something back, number one. And the second thing, what I thought I heard from my colleagues here was some concern about the HRC operating outside of what their charge is and doing investigatory work. So are we going to allow that to continue while these, exploratory items are going on? Because I also heard my colleagues say they are not trained to do that work. Or are we going to ask them to refrain from doing that and direct that type of thing to town staff?
So let me take them in order. The first one with timing, yes, I was planning to set in their different dates for both tasks. With the second, I'd like to actually open that up for the board to discuss. My preference would be for the incident response process as documented on the web to be turned off for now, and not to have it continue, or for the community to have an expectation that this continues. That means we need to redirect, as we have in our agenda, for people to report through other sources, including our DEI officer. That isn't that will necessarily be the long term, but that to avoid a complicated situation occurring over the next few months, that we've redefined it clearly now, and I will put something back in place once we have it well defined. Where are the rest of the members of the board on this?
I also agree that this web thing that says how we investigate complaints is outside of the scope of the charge, and we should turn that off on the webpage.
Ms. Lynn?
My understanding was that document was presented to the select board and approved at some point, so it's not just that it randomly showed up, I wasn't sure if that was clear.
It may have, but the date on it suggests that I was on the board, but I have no recollection of it coming to us. And it was a surprise to me to find that process having been engaged, and only learned of it because it was engaged. And whether or not a previous board did decide to accept it, I think we're reflecting on what is the training and support we're providing, and I think we all agree it's inadequate, and we're putting you in a position that is unfair for volunteers that haven't been appointed based on a set of qualifications that included that ability. And to avoid there being to clean up the public perception, I think we would need to shut it down now until we have a well-defined and well-supported process moving forward. So I've heard from 3 of us.
So, yeah, I don't mind the idea of stopping it. We definitely need to give folks an avenue, though, in the community to how well they handle it in the short term. So as much as I'd love to say, just shut it off, it's, well, where do people go when they have a complaint? We just need to be very clear for everybody's sake how it gets handled. And then just to note, it doesn't say on the website how we investigate complaints. It says how we handle complaints. That's the link. So I want to be clear that we're not using the word investigate there. Inside that link, the PDF does say under certain circumstances, there's an investigation, but not all circumstances. With all that said, I think it's a very intricate flow chart with lots of details. I think, putting the entire thing on pause and pushing everything to, somewhere, we just have to decide what that is. I do think it should be staff, if they're able to handle that.
Just with Mr. Malloy, we had previously asked for those points of contact, and you provided me, and those points of contact actually are in the agenda. Ms. Malloy, if you wouldn't mind just reiterating where you would expect people to go.
Excuse me. So we would, right now, as far as having staff that will work on this with the select board, it would probably be Hamali Shaw, the Chief Equity Officer, and Dana Bickelman, our Human Services Director. And I think once we start having that discussion, we can really just make a determination whether the Chief Equity Officer is where people should go, or whether it should be to the town manager's office generally, or to the police department, which may not be the best when people are trying to make a human rights type of complaint, or to the select board's office. So I think as part of the discussions that we have in the next upcoming weeks, we can decide where the best location is to have people actually go if they have a complaint.
Right, thank you, Mr. Malloy. And just to reiterate for everyone sitting here, the directions we've been providing are for anyone who didn't want to go through the HRC. So if we were to shut it down, that means anyone who wanted to make a complaint would to direct their concerns either to the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination, for which we provide the link, the town's Chief Equity Officer, for which we provide the email address and would presumably put that link online, or to the Lexington Police Department. And as Mr. Malloy said, clearly sometimes these complaints are related to police activity and the like, and you could imagine someone not wanting to go to the police department to report it. So we would clearly have a alternate set of touch points. Ms. Barry.
So just to clarify, I see that there's 2 places on their committee webpage that need to have things removed. On the left-hand side, there is what's called the Human Rights Complaint Form. That needs to be taken offline. And on the right side, under more information, the very bottom thing is a PDF that says how we handle complaints. That's what I would be looking for to be removed from the page at this time until we've done further work.
So Ms. Barry, I agree with you with the exception that I would have those redirect to the Chief Equity Officer for now and a reference of or report to the Massachusetts Commission on Discrimination or the Police Department.
Again.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
if there's some the wording
Right.
in here that would need to be updated, and I think in consultation with the Chief Equity Officer, figure out what the right vehicle is for the issues to get to Ms. Shaw.
Right, and that's a short-term action that can be
Yep.
initiated.
Tomorrow.
Right, and I'm just looking for the consensus of the board that we are asking town staff, Mr. Malloy, to actually execute on this, and I believe that's true. Is there any? Mr. Lucente?
Can we just hear for a moment from the chairs who are, I would just like to get a little feedback from them on this concept, because we decided, you said at the beginning of this meeting, we're not making any decisions tonight. Now it feels like we just made a decision, and I don't know what their thoughts are, and they're the ones impacted by this. And I think in any situation, we want to hear from the people impacted. And not to put you on the spot either, but that's why you get paid the big bucks.
Ms. Lynn?
Okay. So I guess that what is the question? I have lots of opinions, but I wasn't sure. which one I
My
should
question
share.
is specifically tonight, we're talking about removing the how we handle complaints, the website, and redirecting people instead of to the process that's outlined to town staff, Mass Commission Against Discrimination, or the police department. So that's what I would, and it would take the HRC out of that role. I just want to hear the feedback if you have thoughts on that change until we do a further dive into, Mr. Sandine and Ms. Hay will be doing dives into some of these issues, and just want to get your thoughts on that. And I also don't know, again, maybe you're in the middle of other incident responses that we're not aware of.
Right. So we are not in the middle of an incident response. I think it makes sense. I guess it seems like, if there's a review underway on this process, what wasn't clear to me is if we would be expected to connect with Ms. Hay in her process. And I guess the only other thing I would just share is a lot of these incident reports, this particular one's very specific, they're specific, but typically I think what chairs in the past have utilized these incidents for is to inform the board on the committee on understanding where issues lie in the community. So, but yeah, I think in the interim, it makes sense to at least pause those links so that there isn't confusion.
Thank you, Ms. Lynn. And yes, when outlining for Ms. Hay, it was for her to work with staff and with the two of you, the chairs of the HRC, in reviewing where you are and considering where to go. Right. And that then to bring the proposal even at a first draft level. Ms. Sue?
I just wanted to add, I also would like to make sure that we're providing a link to Human Services as well.
Yes.
I think it's really important that people have for all occasions that they need something, that link be there.
Thank you. So while I did say we would make no decisions, I do think that this is one that falls out without that we should take tonight, just to move forward in a clear way. And that we will then be looking at what the more structural, more long-term changes are. Ms. Barry, with regard to your timing perspective, yes, we are about to enter town meeting. It is something that is going to keep our attention and give us little time. I'm hoping that Mr. Sandin will be able to work with Ms. Axtell and staff on looking for options for facilitation over the next 2 weeks. And I know Ms. Axtell has already come together with a few options to evaluate, to be able to come back to us by the end of this month with an outline of here's what we could do and try to get organized to happen in a month or two. Nothing happens tomorrow, unfortunately, because it takes time to find. And we also need to find out whether or not whatever this might cost is actually funds we have available. If it's for the sake, if it's $2, we'll find it easily. If it's $2 million, or it's going to be hard to find. Clearly, it's not going to be either of those, right? But it's but we need to know what those are before we can really set the clear expectation. And for the longer term work, I think, Ms. Hay, I would ask you what you think would be a reasonable time frame.
You mean a reasonable time frame during town meeting?
Well, right. I mean, you have to. It's the reality, right? So you should be able to sleep, and so
Why start now? I think I will need to have an initial conversation with the HRC chairs, with Ms. Shaw, and probably with Ms. Axtell and Ms. Bickelman, and then I will have a better sense. I mean, I can certainly do a draft in my head right now of a few things, but I don't think that would be the most productive way to handle this. So I think it'll take a little while just finding time. I am in fact taking off on Friday morning. I will be out of town for 3 days. So it will not happen this week, but I will make some time to meet with people next week and we can take a stab at getting this a little.
So do you think it would be reasonable to come back to the board with a timeline?
Yeah, not Monday night.
No, not Monday night. And I would say probably not before the 20th and maybe the 25th.
I haven't looked.
We're not really the 25th, right? Totally. It's 27th. If you can, if for some reason you were able to do it earlier, we'll put you on the agenda. But let's set a target for the last meeting of the month to review timeline and whatever directions you think is reasonable to pursue.
Yep.
3 weeks from tonight.
Today is, yeah. All right, so
No,
Wednesday.
we can do that.
So it's 3 weeks from tonight. All right. Do we have any additional comments, or are we set for short-term actions and we will revisit this as that comes in? See nothing else. I want to thank Ms. Lynn and Ms. Xu for the work they've done on this and the work they do all the time on the committee, and for the members of the public who came here to assist and attend this discussion.
Mr. Paddle, excuse me, just for the record, can you just recap what the board's consensus was for the minutes about redirecting the complaint form, et cetera?
Right, so the consensus was to take it down so that it would no longer go to the HRC as in starting their incident response process, but instead go to staff to evaluate, and that the items on the web would explain, here's where you can send it. And that actual language will be developed by staff over the next day or, well, in the short term.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
I'll give you that.
Colleagues, it is almost 8:30. We've been at it for 2 hours. Do you need a break or should we continue? let's keep going. All right,
What was next?
Yeah.
what's
We've got
next
all the
is
town
town meeting.
Can we take 5 minutes?
We're gonna take 5 minutes. And so we're in recess for 5 minutes. We'll be back here at 8:31.
Camera's still gonna get you, Dana.
All right, it is 8:32, and I call the board back to order from its recess. And we will resume with item number 3, which is the 2024 annual town meeting items. Board has already heard Article 41, so we will move to reviewing and discussing the draft select board report to town meeting. Colleagues, in our packets, we have most of the draft of what we're proposing to provide to town meeting. Open it up for members to comment on content. I will say that the introduction has 2 gaps in it. The first is just to, I didn't want to write the, here's what you're going to see without having the content first so that I could, so I will add that after tonight. And the second part is there are some elements that I expect to come in that I will want to add there, including how certain items at town meeting relate to these issues, and there'll just be an introduction. But again, I needed a little more time before putting that in. So those gaps will be filled over the next week. Ms. Hay.
So I apologize. As you may have noticed, was a little occupied the last week or so. So I submitted my report on the goal number 1 later in the afternoon today, and I can just share it with you. It hasn't populated into the form yet, but essentially I had 3 bullet points. This is again the goal on enhancing community vibrancy by increasing diversity of housing stock in size, accessibility, and price. I won't expect you to edit, but if you want me to take any of them out or change them significantly, I can do that before it gets populated in. So in no particular order, the bullets are Article 33 at Annual Town Meeting 2024 seeks authority for the Select Board to sell, lease, or otherwise dispose of town-owned land for the purpose of developing affordable housing. I was initially keeping things short, so I didn't go on and add to that, but I could put another sentence about the fact that this would be a fully affordable development. And I don't know where the board comes out on that, whether you want me to add that in or not. But the second bullet I had was that the board allocated $1,455,000 of our ARPA funds to acquisition of housing units by LexHab in order to retain smaller 1- and 2-family homes now included in the subsidized housing index. Third point was that the first proposal under the revised special residential development bylaw, which is a product of a select board appointed committee, has been introduced. Following the guidelines created by the committee, it proposes 2 2-family homes, 2 3-family condominium buildings, a total of 10 units in 4 buildings rather than a conventional development of single-family homes. 8 of the 10 homes will be served by elevator, increasing their accessibility. 15% of the gross floor area is dedicated to affordable housing. So those are the 3 things that I have under our goal.
Thank you, Ms. Hay. I will just say, for your reference on Article 33, I think it is helpful for you to reinforce that it's all affordable. I've heard from a number of people that even though they saw it was affordable, they didn't understand it was all affordable until they heard it for the 5th time. So I think it bears repeating here again. Ms. Barry.
So I have a question for Ms. Katzenbach. Ms. Katzenbach, would it be helpful if Ms. Hayes sends that to me and I insert it into my draft for you so that everything matches up, fonts and spacing?
I think I have it. I think she said she sent it an email. I'll put it in, and what may end up happening, and I'll let Mr. Pato probably shout out at the end, is I'll probably send a Word document for feedback from each board member after they have some discussions to kind of give me some red lines. And I'll put together a full red line version from all board members' comments after tonight.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I think at this point it's best to get everything into Ms. Katzenbach instead of redirecting through our other members. Mr. Sandine.
So on the question of all affordable, the Affordable Housing Trust has recommended that the motion change so that it reflects all affordable. So I would support that being in our goals as well.
Good. And just while we're on the topic, on Monday night's agenda, we will be addressing Article 33 and some questions about how an RFP would be developed, so that we will have a bit more discussion on that Monday night.
I'd love to have some input on that because I've been working with a couple of other communities through Magic on some of I mean, I'm happy to help you just formulate it because I have some information on inclusions from other communities for that.
Mr. Lucenti, did you have a comment?
No, I think it's a long document, and 14 pages is a lot to read. So, like with all of these collaborative reports, it tends to not read as smoothly because 5 of us put it together, and so I'm assuming maybe the chair is gonna try to tweak it. So make whatever tweaks you want to mine. I'm open. I won't take any criticism of that.
Right, so clearly it isn't one voice. I was going to ask for, once we are close to being done, for final edit, owning the pen, and my intent would be to condense a bit. Though I won't guarantee that I won't leave it alone if time pressure. Right. Other comments? Anything missing on already too long a report, or not that I'm telling you to say nothing? Yeah, the community has done a lot, and that we should be proud of. All right. Anything that shouldn't be there that you've noticed, and if you over the next few days come across something, but if you already know, that would be helpful.
My only comment is on the goals. When this does get put to the website, it would be nice to make sure that maybe these updates belong in somewhere living in our website, so that it's not just stuck in this document, because we only do this document once a year, right? And then the goal updates, updates are happening all the time in the various goal areas. So I don't know if this is a good starting point, is what I'm getting. I hope I don't want to lose it.
Right, and I think that, I wrote down that we haven't yet put the goal list on the web, updated from the previous set, and we will, and having a dynamic, updated piece of information would be helpful there as well. Ms. Barrett.
What I would recommend is on our webpage, on one of the handouts we got, it had a nice little chart of our goals, and we kept it simple. That's what goes up, and then there'd be a link to updates, and we just say like, this would be the March 18th update 2024, and then every time there's an update we just post the update below the goals.
Right, the goal list that's going to go on the web is just the table, and then that will then reference, here's where you can find updates on progress.
Right.
Say, did you have your hand up? No. Are we good? So there'll be a little bit more coming in, and I'll own the pen, and we will approve this at think it's the 18th meeting to then issue, but Ms. Katzbeck, do you recall? Is it the
That's
11th?
correct. Yeah, I think it's the 18th. Mhm.
All right, very good. So let's move now to our article positions. We are largely finalized, but there are a few that are still unresolved. We have 12J, which is the parking lot improvement program. There are 4 weights on this, and remember, this is for the incremental funding for the study, right, Mr. Malloy?
This is, but what the,
You're not on.
sorry, no, it's not. What this is on the parking lot is that there's already an appropriation and we've been doing engineering work. And they need an additional appropriation, a small additional amount. That's what that's for.
Ms. Hay?
And I want to thank Mr. Roy. The clarification that this did not in fact include the CVS lot was the sticking point for me, so I can move to a yes.
All right,
Oh, yes.
I'm also a yes.
Yes.
so it's 5 yeses across the board. Thank you.
Which means that I'd be willing to have it go back on consent.
But I was gonna call it an yes.
Yeah. Let's put it back on consent. And I'm just going,
Do we need to ask Ms. Extel if that needs to go back by the finance committees? Did we take it off when they saw it last?
is that still?
Thank you. Yes, that was on my list to ask you if we could put it back on consent, and they are agreeable. They had voted to have it on consent. The select board was the one that removed it, so they are fine with you adding it back on. Thank you.
All right, good. Let's do that. And the next weight is Article 18, rescind private borrowing, Mr. Sandin.
Yes, I was not sure. That's just a mistake, I think.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. And I'm skipping all the others. If you have changed your view on a particular issue, let us know, but we're moving to.
Do we have any updated information on any of the finance articles where we're all weights?
20, 21, and
Just pause now.
22 are for consent.
But we were all weight on them because we didn't know what the numbers were.
Right, Ms. Cosmo is here to give us context.
Okay, so for rescind prior borrowing authorizations, there is one. It is the $3 million appropriation back from 1999 for the acquisition of conservation. The Conservation Commission did vote last year to approve the town rescinding that. Article 19 for dissolving or the stabilization funds. The only action on that item is to appropriate money into the capital stabilization fund as presented in the budget. There are no other amounts of money or anything else that's changed since the fall special town meeting. So there's no other actions under Article 19 other than the capital stabilization fund. We do not have any unpaid bills. I expect that is going to be IP'd. And then the same with Article 21, the operating enterprise and CPA. I expect we do not have any for those. We do want to give the board an update just about current where the budget stands on a few items. There are a few things that are trending over right now. I think we were going to talk about that at the next meeting, but we just don't think that right now is the right time to adjust because some of those things may be able to be absorbed, and I think that we just kind of need to keep tracking them. I think that we will be able to handle all of them with an end of year budget adjustment like we usually do in the June, July timeframe. And then Article 22, I still expect will be IP'd. There's no actions for appropriate for authorized capital improvements.
All right, so we've already dealt with 18. I'm a yes for 19, 20, 21, and 22.
I'm a yes as well on all 4 of those.
Yes, yes,
Same.
yes, yes.
Okay, so all 5 of us are yeses for all of these. Thank you, Ms. Kosnoff. Moving to the next item is the Pine Meadows Clubhouse renovation, and I think I needed time and I still need time. And there's nothing new there that's an issue, but I need to be able to read it. Right.
Same.
Okay, so we're still in that boat.
Okay.
And for
Mr. Sandin, is there anything you need on 25?
Pine Meadows. Clubhouse.
No,
You're a no, or there's nothing you need?
I don't need anything.
Are you still awake?
Yes.
Okay.
Moving to Article 29, which is noise. We have 4 weights on A.
I'm still awake.
I'm also.
You're wait on B. Oh, you're
This is
wait
all
on.
on
you're-
A.
I'm waiting on A and I probably will be until town meeting.
Okay. I'm gonna remain awake.
That's fine. That's fine. And Miss Harry's still remaining awake. Okay, that's good. And for B, I'm remaining awake. And
I will remain awake until I hear the conversation.
right, I'm gonna be remaining awake till town meeting, so we're all set on that. For 31, the single serve plastic water bottles, we were, I think, waiting on something coming back from
Outreach. We asked
The
the
outreach,
opponent to
right.
come back with some information on outreach. Yeah.
Right, Ms. Axel, I don't know if we scheduled the proponent to come back, or is we just waiting to hear them?
I can reach out again to the proponent to see if I can get some information. I'm working with him on his video as well, which I was hoping he would clarify. Unfortunately, I don't have that video yet, but I'll work on it.
All right, and if there's no clarification, I think we're waiting until town meeting. And am I speaking accurately for the board? Okay. Article 35,
Stay awake on that for now.
thank you. Article 37, importance of resolution for trees.
Stay away. I want to talk to the proponent.
Sure.
And I'm still awake. I think I'm still concerned about the obligation of staff on that, which when I asked Mr. Pinsnow when he was in the room, he shared. So some concern on that. So.
Okay. 41 here tonight, I'm a yes, and I think we were all yeses, but
Yes.
yes, okay. So that's across the board. 43, which voting rights for 16-year-olds, we now have 2 weights, is that still the same?
Still awake.
Okay. On 45, Indigenous Peoples, Mr. Lucente.
So, Mr. Pato, you and I spoke of this offline. I just wanted to express my thoughts on this particular article. So I did meet proponents of the article last week. We had a nice conversation. So I'll just lay out to the board my concern because it's sort of multi-layered, and I'm glad Ms. Axtell is still here so that she can provide some context as well. So just stepping back without getting into the specifics of the details of what's written and what we're trying to go after at town meeting. The way I fully support the concept of Indigenous Peoples Day. I think giving an opportunity to people who have been underrepresented to get recognized is wonderful. I actually think it's a great idea. The challenge I have is what to do with Columbus Day. And before I get into the specifics, Columbus Day, for me personally, isn't as much a celebration of Columbus as it is a celebration of Italian American heritage and how Italian American culture, food, all that is celebrated. And I'm not gonna fall on a sword over the fact that, we have to keep the words Columbus Day, because I don't think he was particularly loved by a lot of people. As history's evolved and more information's come out, often not looked upon as a very, did some great discoveries, but not necessarily a great human being. But at the same time, as someone who grew up as an Italian American and have kids that are very proud of that heritage, it's hard for me to sit here and say we're going to raise up this group but slap down another group at the same time. It just does not feel right to me. And what I would like our board to do is take a look at what are we going to do with Columbus Day. So the written language in this article is to add Indigenous Peoples Day. It's not to replace or rename Columbus Day to this. In consultation with the deputy town manager, Ms. Axtell. We had a discussion about this. I did have this discussion as well with the proponents. But I think when it comes to the town meeting, that they may read this as a replacement. So I think we as a board need to be clear about what our intentions are, because the motion is not written as a replacement, and the article that was signed is not written as a replacement. So I think we just need to be very clear about what are we planning to do. We don't have to necessarily decide this tonight, but I think we need to have a discussion very soon about what we intend. Are we going to scratch it entirely? Are we going to, because it's within our purview, I think, as a board to say, what do we do? What do we call this holiday? So I would at a minimum ask that we take it under consideration at our table. Maybe we need to ask, others in the community about it as well, but I feel very strongly about this, and I may be the only one in the entire town meeting that cares about this, but I don't feel right especially after the discussion we had tonight about being sensitive to other cultures and other views. It just doesn't feel right that we're completely erasing that sort of celebration and that recognition of Italian Americans. And Italian Americans have had a long history here in Lexington. A lot of farmers were Italians that first came to the country and helped build a lot of what Lexington is today. And they've served a very important part of our history. So even just from a local level, I think it's important that we continue to celebrate that.
So colleagues, I think Mr. Lucente is right in that the motion at town meeting, while establishing Indigenous Peoples' Day, doesn't make any other change, and that does come back to the board for us to consider, and I think it's fair for us to consider. That doesn't change my view of should we accept this motion at town meeting for naming that day as Indigenous People Day. Mr. Lucente, would it make you more comfortable to, you should take whatever position you feel comfortable with, but would it make you more comfortable if the board says we will take this on as an action to explore?
Yes, but I would like some, we don't have unlimited time, I know, to spend on every single topic, but this is one that it's important to me personally. But it would make me more comfortable having a plan going into town meeting of what we're telling the people that are voting on this, that this is what we're doing. So I'm really looking for what's our plan, and if it's a later discussion, I just hope it's not. What I don't want to see is an automatic. The vote happens, and then all of our town calendars change, and everyone said, "Oh, I thought that's what we were doing." And that's, not what the intent was. I want to make sure that our intent is extremely clear for town meeting. And if the intent is we're going to have a conversation by a certain date, then, about this, and I'm fine with that. And I would be more supportive of passing this. I don't want to support it if the intent is the rest of the board feels this is no, that we're not going down that road. This is simply a replacement. And I don't know how the rest of the board feels on that topic.
Colleagues, are you prepared to consider this now, or do you want to think about it and we'll talk about it on our next opportunity? Next opportunity, which is Monday, that's right. Next. All right.
Mr. Pato?
Ms. Axtell.
I apologize. If I could just add one other thing in our discussion with my discussion with Mr. Lucente. I think that one of the big conflicts, maybe for lack of a better term, is that the intention, I believe, of the proponents, what I gathered from them, is that they want it to be renamed, but the motion and the article are not written that way. The article below the line is they want to rename it, but that's where I think there might be confusion. So I think the sort of making it clear from the board perspective is where we were. I think maybe that's a piece of where it's coming from, is that that's their intention, but that is not how they wrote the article. And again, the descriptor was what they wanted to do, but that's not what they got signed or what the motion is. So I hope that adds a little clarity as well.
Thank you, Ms. Axtell. So I think on Monday, we can consider whether or not we want to remove any reference to anything other than Indigenous People Day on that day. If we want to retain Columbus Day as associated with the same day, or if we want to move to do something like recognize that day also as Italian Heritage Day in Lexington. So that will be the conversation for Monday.
Thank you.
Mr. Sandin?
So for me, I would be interested in understanding what other communities are doing and what kind of solutions they've come to this. I hope this is not something that we have to reinvent the wheel ourselves, and we can figure out, we can take some guidance from other communities that have had a successful way of addressing this issue.
Right, and Ms. Lucente, if you wouldn't mind taking sort of the lead on that.
I will.
Thank you. All right, next one is Royal Family Invitation. I'm going to be waiting until town meeting.
I think I'm actually, I'll stay away another week. I may switch and I'll still listen to town meeting, but I certainly want to hear what people have to say. I'll stay put for a week.
So just a quick update, Ms. Katzenbach, the presenter for that one is Mr. Lucente.
Yes, and that actually isn't what I submitted to the clerks, to Ms. Brown, the moderator.
Is or isn't?
Is with Mr. Lucente as the presenter.
Okay. Is there anything that either of you need to help you make your decision, or you just want to hear the?
No, I want to hear the conversation, Tony.
Okay.
As I said, I heard a little bit of pushback. And so I just want to hear that more fully to understand what people's concerns are. Personally, I thought it was kind of a fun idea, but I recognize that there are people who feel differently. So I just want to hear that.
Yeah, I'll leave it there. Moving on to zoning, Article 47 signs. I'm now a yes. Is anybody else?
I am. And we saw, actually hold, at the EDAC meeting last Thursday, there was a presentation. There were a few minor changes after we saw it. The planning board met the next night. I've lost track. Did we get that as an email also, or did just Mr. Lucente and I see that in the presentation?
Ms. Axel, I believe the board received an update.
Yes, they did.
Right.
Okay.
We sent an email that had all the changes in relation to the select board suggestions.
Okay, I just want to make
resend
sure
that.
everybody had that before we took positions. I am a yes on it, but I just wanted to make sure everybody knew all the new information.
Yeah, I mean, that was my recollection. That's part of why I'm now a yes. Anybody else ready, or do you still need more time? Fine.
I'm still a wait. I appreciate the changes, but I haven't had time to talk to anybody to really understand what their thoughts were in making those changes.
Mr. Lucente, or
I'm going to stay away on the
That's fine.
sign bylaw just because it has been a moving target, and I just want to make sure there was a pretty in-depth discussion at the EDAC meeting, and they had voted. I'm trying to remember what their vote was, and it's escaping me because
I took notes until I had to leave, so let me just see if I have them.
right. And while you're looking, let's move on to the next one. Any changes on short-term rentals? Or is that the?
I need some time on all these zoning things just to make sure I'm understanding it correctly.
That's fine. The other weight and the weight on permitted uses, both of those two I want to spend more time on. I am, however, now a yes on the inclusionary housing and on the maximum height for the overlay district. Had time to look at those.
so there was some. I apologize. I feel unprepared, right this moment, but there was another recommendation from EDAC on, I believe it was Article 49.
Permitted uses.
Yeah, permitted uses that so I'm gonna just switch. If I could just become a wait on 49 for now, please.
All right, and if you could give us the information from the EDA, make sure the whole board has that.
They were sending a letter. I'll follow up with the vice chair because they were drafting something to send over to us that had some pretty interesting thoughts and arguments in it.
And then he was sick shortly thereafter and lost several days, so I think that's why we just don't have it yet.
All right, well, that brings us to the end. If nobody else has any changes, then we will conclude town meeting item.
Question about town meeting?
Is Barry.
Did you have the moderators meeting?
There was a moderators meeting that was last night. I could not attend because I was at the Lexington High School. So I'm going to get a briefing. So I don't have more information for you right now.
Ms. Axtell, do we know if she did time certain on anything?
Yes, he's talking about. Okay,
So I'm
and I can't
specifically
find my
inquiring,
notes, but if you,
specifically inquiring about the 250 articles because I have people coming
Yes.
for those.
those are going to be as you requested, though, I think it's the 11th, it's the last meeting before Patriots Day.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so those are the ones. Yep, she confirmed that.
Similarly, do we have a date certain for Article 33? Because I know there's a lot of community interest in attending that.
That will have a date certain, but it does not have which date yet.
Thank you.
Any other
She was
questions?
working on, there were quite a few date certains that she has to work in. So she took all of that in and then we'll share out the schedule with those date certains.
Thank you.
All right, anything else on town meeting? Ms. Axtell, is there anything you want from us?
Yes, please. Just a couple of things. One is with 21, the operating budget becoming IP'd. I'd like to know if the board can vote for it to be on consent. You are all yeses on moving that to, I mean.
Does anybody object?
That already.
No objection.
Okay, and then just a reminder, the position statements are coming out fast and furious. Please, if you can look for those and turn them back to me within 24 to 48 hours if possible, with town meetings starting on the 18th. And then just a reminder that March 13th next week for town meeting members and staff, we're having the tablet training at Batten Hall at 6:30. Thank you.
Ms. Axtell, do we know which night is which articles yet for the two TMMA nights?
Yes, I just had the schedule. They are, Bridger, the chair and vice chair are sending out the schedule, I believe, tonight to TMMA. If you want, I can run through it, or just if you want to wait for that email.
We can wait if it's coming, that's okay.
It should be coming tonight. I'll look for it. If it doesn't come out tonight, I can share it with the board tomorrow. The schedule that I have.
That would be great. I just need to let a committee that meets in conflict know whether I can be at their meeting or not.
Okay.
It's stuff we already heard.
All right, the only other piece of information is we're not expecting to send letters this year because anybody who comes in person, the tablets will be preloaded with their passwords, etc. Anybody who's attending remotely, we're going to ask them to log in a week or two before just to make sure they have it. And if they don't have it, there'll be access for the equivalent of the letter at the select board office, or they can use the change password function, which will go live next week. It's not currently live. And for new members, of course, they will be given a letter. But because of timing, we're telling them to come here starting next week. Anything else, Mr. Sandy?
So if I'm understanding correctly, if somebody is intending to attend remotely, they would need to do a change password thing before town meeting starts? Is that what you're saying?
So passwords for each member are what they were last year, so people should know them. They've used them, but if they've forgotten or if their browsers aren't set to remember them, they can use the change password, and we're going to send out a note probably early next week saying, please log in even if you're not considering attending remotely, just so that you.
Okay, I thought I had heard you say that everybody needs to change their passwords.
No.
Thank you.
It's right. Okay, let's move to item number 4, Compost site rates. Mr. Pinsino.
Yeah. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, and we see your presentation.
Okay, thank you. All right, what I'd like to present to you is a proposed increase in the compost rates. We look at this every couple of years. You can see that the last time we increased was February of 2022. What we do is we look at our cost for producing the materials, but also what other either communities or entities are charging for these materials, so that we remain competitive, but we also provide a decent price for people that are using the site, both residents and contractors. So just a couple things that influence that, inflation rates, the administrative service fees since we went to the credit cards, and then just our general labor, parts and equipment to produce those materials. FY23, we had revenues of about 880,000. I do have an updated number. The balance is about 727,000 as of June 30th of 23. So if we can go to the next slide, and this is a revolving fund, so it's money in and then money out in order to operate the site. So I won't read through all of these. I can take particular questions, but these are the proposed rates that we have for the different products that are both made and sold up at the compost site. If you can go to the next slide, I do have a couple of corrections. So on the proposal, it should be that March 15th of 2024. And under the brush 4-, that should actually be 1750 as the proposed. That matches the summary sheet at the end. We just had a typo in there, so that should be 1750. If you go to the next slide, please. Again, these would be March 15th of 2024, that last column. And these deal with the permits. So if you can go to the next one, please. So this just gives a comparison as to where we are at currently, what we are proposing, then some various entities that we have looked at prices from, what the averages are and how we compare to that. So I think if you look at this, you can see that the rates that we're proposing after a couple of years without any increases still have us under the average and pretty much under what other communities or other entities are charging. So if you go to the next slide. And again, you can see that carry through where we are both below the average. I'll note leaf mulch. There's not a lot of places or we couldn't find other people that are making that leaf mulch. That has been a very popular product. So we're just proposing a small increase in that product up at the site. And if you go to the next one, please. So again, Hartwell Avenue, there's definitely an avoided tip fee for the materials that are taken up there, estimated at about $50,000 a year. By taking it in house in town, we don't have to ship yard waste out. Our vendor, we're able to bring it right up to the Hartwell site and then turn it into a usable product, compost, leaf mulch, things like that. So we're mitigating the emissions. It certainly is a plus to the operations that we do. throughout the public grounds area and some of our other divisions, where that's an avoided cost because we have materials that are already up at the site. And again, the sustainable material management is consistent with the zero waste plan that we have. And I think that that's all of the slides that we have. So I'd be happy to take any questions on any of the items or go from there. We would like to get your approval on these new rates because we would like to reach out and have those conversations with anyone that would be effective so we can go ahead and get those rates in place for the spring season.
Thank you, Mr. Palmstino. Colleagues, any concerns, comments, Mr. Lucente?
Thank you, Mr. Pizzano. Just to clarify, the comp on slide 2, the date at the number 5, it says the balance of 774,000 as of June of 22. That's 23, correct?
Well, so we got an updated number today. So it's as of June 30th of 23, it's about 727,000.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you very much. In the last rate increase, that's the correct year, right? It was
Correct.
22 since we last updated. 2 years
Yeah,
ago.
we try to do it every couple of years, review what's out there, where we stand, and then make adjustments.
So it's just the effective dates below that we want to start March 15, 24. Okay. I just want to make
Correct,
sure
yeah.
years and all that situated. Thank you very much. I think this is a great idea. Looks like we're still under market. So I don't have any issues with it. Thank you.
If there are no other issues, I will move to approve the proposed compost site rates as presented with the corrected dates.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. None, it's 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Pizzano.
Thank you.
Moving to item number 5, which is expenditure of funds for gift of cash received for the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Lexington Monument. Mr. Malloy.
Yes, very quickly, Howard Walk, who was raised in town, has donated $250,000 to the town for the purpose of developing a monument. These, for the 250th, obviously. The select board has already approved the site, and town council and I worked with Mr. Walk to develop the grant agreement. And at this point, he's already made the first payment, and we can accept those payments. And this is similar to what we've discussed before, but we can't actually expend any funds until the board approves the purpose for expending the funds under General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A. And so we have a recommended action, which would be a motion to approve the use of the $250,000 donation from Mr. Walk for the purpose of establishing a monument for the 250th anniversary of the First Battle of the American Revolution.
Thank you, Mr. Malloy. We were very appreciative of the gift. Colleagues, Mr. Sandin.
I have a question. The sort of introduction to this says the select board has approved the site. And my recollection is we approved a couple sites, and I was just wondering if it's changed that we've selected one of those 2 sites, or whether this is just whether the wording should be plural rather than
it hasn't changed.
2 spots.
It's 2
on
spots
one piece of property.
in one piece of property, and it's really even one part of the property, the front part of the Belfry property. So I just refer to it as one.
We're still in the process of deciding which location.
There'll be a community meeting, I believe, a week from now on the 13th to see the 4 finalists.
Yeah, that's all I was wondering, is whether I missed that it had been already.
So I will just quickly plug it. I have seen the 4 finalists' applications. You should definitely attend that meeting. I'll get back to you on time.
Right, Ms. Barry will advertise the time for everyone. All right, seeing no other questions, I move to approve the use of the $250,000 donation from Howard Wolk for the purpose of establishing a monument for the 250th anniversary of the First Battle of the American Revolution.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. None. It is unanimous. Thank you.
So just to follow up, that finalist public meeting is next Wednesday night from 5:30 to 7:30 on Zoom. So we'll make sure that link gets out.
Right, and Wednesday night is the tablet trial for members of TMM. There are always multiple things going,
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah.
March Madness.
any day, any month. Let's move on to the increase to outdoor dining permit fees. Mr. Malloy.
Yes, as the board may recall, in December of 22, we discussed outdoor dining permit fees. We had, reduced them, eliminated them during the pandemic, and then we're reinstituting it. And when we did that, we looked at it and found that there was a lot of disparities between one business and another. There wasn't really a basis per chair, per table. One business paid $150, the other one paid like $2,500. It was totally, and we found that it was totally out of whack too. So when we did a review of charges, our fees charged by Cambridge, Somerville, Needham, Arlington, Waltham, and Burlington, Bedfords, and Danvers. And so we established set fees, and that was a couple of years ago. And prior to the pandemic, the board's or the town's practice was to increase those fees by 2% a year, so they stayed pace with inflation. And so I'm just making a recommendation at this point in time that we continue that practice so that we have small increases each year and not a large increase at some point in time. So there's some minor increases to the 3 different fees that are charged as shown in the suggested motion.
Thank you, Mr. Malloy. Colleagues, Mrs. Barry.
So, Mr. Malloy, I have a question. What is the duration of the permit? Is it a year-long, 365 days?
It's a year, yes.
Okay, so leaving furniture out over the winter is okay? It doesn't impact?
It doesn't stay out over the winter. So it's an annual permit, but they're not generally used during the winter, from what I can tell. The Pete's might have theirs out at times, but I don't think that other.
Il Casale has had theirs out, but I mean, it's been a very mild winter, so I just didn't know if this was a seasonal thing or.
Yeah.
So Il Casale's on private property.
So it creeps past the little fence. Yeah. And then what is the requirement for them if it's like on the sidewalk in terms of trash and keeping it presentable and all that? Is that in the permit?
That is in the permit. It's one of the changes that we made last time too, was that there was requirement for them to do property cleanup and some other things as part of the permitting process.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Hay, then Mr. Sandy.
Thanks. I just had a quick question on the parklet. Can you just explain a little bit about how that's permitted? Is it permitted to a single entity? And if so, is there a cost for it? What, like, how does that work?
It's a good question. Because I haven't really been involved in permitting the parklet, really. It was always in front of the coffee shop where the bike shop is now. Or I guess the art gallery, in that general area. And then the pandemic happened and we weren't using it. We do have it now, but we didn't actually do anything with it last year. So we'll have to probably develop some sort of a policy on who gets it and where it would go.
Right, Mr. Malloy, my recollection is that when we initially put the parklet out, it wasn't actually allocated to any particular business. It was a public park that anyone can use, and it was not, the furniture was town furniture, not provided by we considered the opportunity for there to be additional parklets that were in service of a particular business, that we would have to take a look at which parking space, so it's whether or not to do it. So we've never actually done a dedicated parklet with a fee.
Which is exactly why I'm asking the question, because how do we charge a fee on it if we're not going to dedicate it to anyone in particular?
So I think this fee would be for a dedicated parklet. If we put a town parklet out again, there is no fee because it's the town.
Right. So I guess that's all I'm clarifying. We right now only own one. So.
Yes.
Yeah, we do. We have it. It came in. I thought, yeah.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, that was, that's carryover language. Should just be for the parklet.
But again, if we only have the one,
Yeah, then we have to develop a process on where it goes.
but that means that we are determining that we're not going to use it as a community parklet anymore.
Well, if you want to use it as a community parklet, then we will not have a fee for it.
Right, so I guess that's where I'm
That's not what the board said.
circuitously getting to, is that a decision we made that I don't remember making the decision, but maybe we did, and I don't remember.
No, I don't recall making that decision, and the location had been chosen by engineering, essentially with traffic analysis of where would it be least impactful and most beneficial to the public at large. And what I have recalled is that there were other entities that were interested in having a parklet, and for us to expand beyond one, we were going to need to charge to be able to get them. So,
So maybe the motion is correct. It just intends that if somebody is interested, we would then acquire a second one for that purpose.
I think we're going to need to have a conversation about the existing parklet and whether or not we're going to put it out as a municipal.
I believe so, because when we talked about it in December of 22, the cost of the parklet was like $37,500. We estimated it would last 10 years, so we were amortizing the fee over the estimated life of the parklet. So I'll have to go back and take a look at the discussion to tell you the truth, but I think that we were looking at doing something different.
Mr. Shandy.
So also on the parklet, my recollection was that the board said that this parklet had been a success, and we wanted to see and hear some ideas about how we might see additional parklets. So that was really my question: is what analysis has been done, or if we haven't yet done that analysis because of COVID or whatever, can we get back on that and come back with some ideas of how we can see additional parklets? Because I've seen it as the community saying that really appreciate this, and I would love to see more.
Right, I think it's been very well received, but there is a tension with each parklet eliminates parking. And so the merchants want and are concerned about it. So it's a balance. All right. Does the board want to change the motion at all, other than the ones we have acquired in a new parklet? Are we satisfied in putting in this fee? Should we charge a fee? And then deal with the
I would rather have the motion just hit the first two lines in it. Let's wait to hear what the answer is, what we said about this, or set up a decision about whether we want to charge for a parklet at all, versus having it be a municipal parklet. I think, unless I'm missing something, that is still an open question.
right. I think the issue will be for expected lifespan of this parklet. It's paid for already. But for the next one, we'll need to think about how we're going to fund it. So colleagues, I'm asked here one request to remove it. I'm inclined to just go ahead and remove that for tonight, and then we'll revisit it.
I would support that.
All right. Any other comments? And Mr. Malloy, that doesn't create any, okay. So I move to approve a 2% fee increase for outdoor dining permits effective for permits in 2024. So the permit fees are up to 10 outdoor seats on public sidewalks, $102 per year, and over 10 seats on public sidewalks, $255 per year. Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. None. It is unanimous, 5-0. All right. Our next regularly scheduled meeting will be on Monday, March 11th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. via hybrid participation, and we will then have meetings every night of town meeting that are going to be crunched. I now move.
Mr. Petto, before we do that,
Mr. Shandy.
The first item on the agenda for Monday night is Article 33. I just wanted to make sure that the board was thinking about what that and the intent of that would be. So do you want to say something, or do you?
So I did already, but I can repeat it. It's, so we will be looking at the conditions that we would be looking for in an RFP so that we can provide feedback to town meeting as to what would the process be. It's not in existence at this stage, but we would consider what are the elements that we would be looking to provide. We would explain the all affordable clarification, which was always the intent. And there are some questions about whether or not any property would be a taxable property or a pilot. And my understanding is that the entities that would reply to this all have to be for-profit organizations, so it would be taxable property. But we'll have that detail explained to us on Monday, and then we can discuss what our thoughts are.
Right, and so there's a number of concerns that have been raised, and there's some hope that the select board might establish some guidelines for what the RFP might look like.
All right, very good. Thank you for that reminder. And I move that we adjourn. So moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Right.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. We are adjourned. Thank you.